Hi everybody, welcome back to the Matrix Game of Life. Today is the 9th of March 2023. We're entering what I designated level 3 videos, and we're going to begin with the basics of a series on cycles. Well, I'll say more about it after I hand this off to my artificial intelligence sponsor and he makes his speech. And I'll be right back with you as soon as that is done.
Hello, and welcome to the Matrix Game of Life. It is the generosity of viewers like you that makes this channel possible. If you find the information provided as being beneficial, please send a thank you gift. It will be much appreciated. A PayPal link can be found in the description section of all videos. May your Matrix experience be one of health and of prosperity.
Okay, and we're off. In this case, we're off again. I'm having a lot of problems with my video capture software, and I can't really figure out why. I've been using the same software for years, but I find myself getting several minutes into the video and everything goes haywire. But I'm going to try it again. What choice do I have? So, starting off here, I'm going to introduce the very basics, bare bones basics of what is needed to know, what we need to know, what we need to understand about the topic of cycles, which, when you really dig down deep into it, can become a very complicated concept, confusing until it's really studied out. Because the number of cycles that go on, in this case, in our universe, our physical universe, which is what I'm talking about, physicality, what we can perceive with our senses. In this universe alone, there are so many cycles that it's mind-boggling. But they're all based on two different words, mostly. And those are the words that I suggested that you do a little research on. The first word was pralaya, and the second word was manvantara. Now those words represent conceptually units of the measurement of time. For our purposes, and in this case, universal time. And to break that down into our Earth year, for simplification, which I will call a solar year, the time it takes our sun to our Earth to circumnavigate our sun. 365 days, we all know that. So let me try to keep it simple. Now, a manvantara is the measurement of time, in this case in solar years, of manifestation, meaning when things exist, stars, galaxies, nebula, and all the way down to planets, solar systems, planets, and in our case, the Earth, which will be my primary reference point, the Earth, since that's our current experience and it's what we know. We know our Earth. It is physical, and we perceive what happens, we perceive the Earth and what we call our lives and what happens in our lives basically by the use of our senses. We are informed of our experiences through our senses. The outer senses, sight, smell, hearing, taste, touch, and our more subtle inner senses, thought, feelings, and emotions. So it's important that you understand that in this next series of videos that we're going to do about cycles, that I'm talking about the physical universe, physicality, full duality, and what I will not be talking about is anything esoteric, mystical, spiritual. That would be the existences that take up, well, that are in the same space, but on different levels, different frequency levels, different states of being, different levels of consciousness. Beings, intelligent, conscious, aware beings that we cannot see. Just for example, like the angelic realm and all of the angelic hierarchies. I'm not going to be talking about those things for a while. But even in those, like let's just say among the angelic host, the same principles of Pralaya and Manvantara are in play. So a Manvantara is a period of manifestation. A Pralaya is a period of non-manifestation. Everything that we perceive in our physical universe is dissolved. That's on a universal scale. And down. But a Manvantara is always followed by a Pralaya. So you have manifestation and non-manifestation. Then you have manifestation and non-manifestation. It's a cycle. The one follows the other. To say which one comes first, in the grand scheme of things, is a wrong question. Because it's an eternal principle. Let me just mention like the kind of scope of things we're talking about. Use your imagination. All right, imagine a universe starts to appear. It starts to manifest. And eventually it's fully manifest. It will stay manifest. I'm talking about on a universal level now. The biggest level that the longest level, you know what I mean. And it will remain manifest according to ancient, esoteric scriptures and I really, in all the esoteric scriptures that I've studied that dealt with this, I've never seen any conflict. But anyhow, the universe will stay manifest for a period in solar years of 320 trillion 40 billion years. And then it will dissolve. And there will be a period of non-manifestation, a pralaya, that is equal in length. 320 trillion 40 billion years. And then a pralaya. I mean, a manvantara, followed by a pralaya. Round and round it goes. It's a cycle. That's just to give you some idea of the scale of things that we're talking about. Now, that same principle of manvantara and pralaya, manifestation and non-manifestation, works at the subatomic level. If you know anything about physics, and if you don't, you can do a little research about particle physicists. They all agree that a particle will appear and disappear. Appear somewhere else, disappear, blink on and off so quickly the human eye could never catch it. Only our really very scientifically advanced measuring devices can pick it up. But that's a pralaya, a manvantara, and a pralaya. Here, not here. Here, not here. It's a cycle. So from the quantum world of the atom to the vastness of the universe, it follows the same principle, based on cycles, which are units of time of manifestation and non-manifestation, regardless of the length of the time. Now, I'll be the first to admit that where these ancient manuscript writers got their information about how long a universe exists and how long it does not exist before it exists again, when you're talking like 320 plus trillion years, I wonder where they get those numbers. either they got a connection with beings that are so advanced and well beyond our realm of perception. In a way, you can call that a source-self connection. We talked about that. Or they just use those astronomically large numbers for the universe anyhow, in some effort to point out that we're talking long periods of time. Periods of time that are without beginning and without end. You can't say what came first, because there is no first or second. There are just two states of being or not being, simply always rotating. Nobody can conceive of a beginning to this, although later on, when we get to it, you will see that when there are periods of non-manifestation and manifestation, that there's something else in the background that does not cycle, that is infinite. And I'll just throw a little footnote in right here, and we'll talk about it eventually. The word eternity and the word infinite mean two different things. There are multiple eternities. I'm not even going to go into that just now. I'm trying to keep it basic right now. There are multiple eternities, but there's only one infinity. Eternity cycle. Infinity does not. Infinity is what I called in one of my recent prior videos, nothing. That's what I called it, nothing. Excuse me. Another word for it would be space minus any light sources. But that word space has to be qualified because it's different in a subtle way than the space that the universe occupies. I mean, who would have thought that there are two different types of space? You can choose to believe that or not believe it, but what we believe does not necessarily constitute fact, universal truth, which is what I would suspect, if you're watching videos like this, it's what we're after. We want to know the truth. What is this that is? Where did it come from? What's it doing here? Where's it going? Just like us. People ask, where did I come from? What am I? Where am I going? So then we're going to start with the basic principles of two words, Manvantara and Pralaya. And those are going to be the basic units of measurement that everything else that we talk about are based upon. Let's bring it down. Let's forget about the entirety of the universe and let's bring it down to our physical planet, the Earth. Is it possible, or even probable, in your way of thinking, that there was an Earth before this Earth? And after this Earth is gone, there'll be a period of time when there is no Earth, and then another Earth will appear. It will appear in what we call universal space. Now, the manifestation of an Earth, its dissolution, and a period of non-manifestation of an Earth, and then a re-manifestation of an Earth, is a cycle of Manvantara and Pralaya. I don't think that you're going to learn that if you're studying science at MIT or you're a graduate of Oxford. Science as a whole would take what I just said, they'd boot me right out of the classroom. Probably call me a heretic or something. But hey, science itself is investigative. It wants to get to the truth. At least it should. Don't get politics involved in it. If you hear me. But scientists are on our earth, in the realm of scientists and in their circles, they hold certain belief systems that if you bump up against them, they'll push back. People can believe anything that they want to believe. Anything. They can even say, I can prove it. A lot of times they can. A mathematician will prove to you that if you have 2 apples and I give you 2 more, that you have 4 apples. He will prove that. And at our level of experience, 2 and 2 is 4. That is true. Some people say that mathematics is a universal language. In a way it is, and in another way it definitely is not. Nevertheless, if you're an astrophysicist or an astronomer, somebody learned and taught and trained and cosmogenesis, just because of the conditioning of a childhood, grade school, high school, college, post-college, they're conditioned, they're taught the beliefs of their predecessors. And they hold on to those beliefs as though they are the absolute, incontrovertible, never can be changed truth. The philosopher's stone. History itself ought to tell us that we ought not be so steeped in what we believe. There was a time people believed, people like Galileo were persecuted because they introduced something that went against the status quo. It happens all the time. Maybe not on the level of Galileo or Copernicus or something. You have probably experienced it in your own life. You believe one thing, the other person believes the other thing. Conflict arises. One person walks away, the other one's dead. Look at war. Politics. War and politics, education, medicine, finance, major things in our experience, those are all games within a game. A wheel within a wheel. But I don't want to get off course here. We are talking in terms of physicality, not ideologies. We are talking in terms of what concretely is perceived by us. I don't have to believe that when I walk outside in the daytime and look up at the sky, I'll see a sky. I'd be quite shaken if I looked up and there was no such thing as a sky. I mean, what would you do? I don't have to believe there's a sky. I don't have to believe that there's a sun. It's there. I perceive it. It exists. On what level is a whole nother story. But I don't have to believe that there's a sun. So there's a vast difference between believing and knowing. And I can only speak for myself and from the testimonies of others who were the seekers of truth, that the goal is not to believe, it's to know. That is a tall order. Many videos back, I talked about what I termed, and I didn't coin this phrase, but I used it. I borrowed it. I talked about what's called a source-self connection. That is not a mental connection. It's not an intellectual connection. It's not a connection of the intellect. It's a connection, for lack of a better word, of the heart, the soul. The soul is the vehicle of spirit. And when you're operating from the soul, you're able to tap in to data beyond your immediate experiences. Some people want to call it like the oversoul or your higher self. There's a lot of different words for the same thing, but on a very basic level, you're tapping in to what you are anyhow, source. Jesus said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. I and the Father are one. Now, I will put a parenthesis, a word around the word Father, but he was talking of a concept. You can make the same statement that he made. Number one, if you're religious, you probably won't believe that you can make the same statement, because I'm not saying you personally, but many people have been conditioned over the course of their religious trainings and teachings and goings to church that if you say that you're the Father, you're saying you're God, you're saying you're source. And that's blasphemy. You'll burn at the stake. Studying spiritual matters on an esoteric level rather than on an exoteric level, studying, looking for truth, can be a very dangerous proposition. Like I said, some people have called me mad, crazy. Who the hell does he think he is? Where does he get this information? I'll be the first to admit, a lot of the information that I know, I first came across in Western and Eastern manuscripts, spiritual books, the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, the Vedas, all the way to literature that's been written by people in New Zealand, South America, from all over the world. These people have learned what they are, not who, but what. And waking up to the fact, the truth of what you are, opens a door, because you realize that what you were searching for years or decades or a lifetime, when you found what you were looking for, what you found was yourself. Your true self, your true being, your true essence, That's why Jesus could say, when his apostles said to him, "Tell us about this Father you're always talking about." And Jesus looked at him and he says, "Hey, have I been with you for all this time and you don't get it?" He said, "Look, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. I and the Father are one." That was his way of saying it. That's biblical scripture. If you read other manuscripts, just for example, say it was penned by a Tibetan master, not a master of religion, a master of esoteric understanding. He would say, for example, the one is the many and the many is the one. Does it matter whether you believe that or not? It doesn't matter to me. But by not understanding that, you'd be missing out on a connection and access to information, to data, that at times will just be downloaded into you, so to speak, and you'll go, oh. Some people call that revelation, a revealing of what's hidden. Esoteric knowledge, well, things may be changing a little bit because of factors about our Earth that are changing, and the evolution of the Earth and us that live on it. That's a whole nother teaching about this embedded within cycles. But things may be changing somewhat, but for centuries and centuries, esoteric knowledge, mystical knowledge, occult knowledge, call it what you want. Call it spiritual knowledge. It doesn't matter what you call it, it doesn't change the knowledge. To name something doesn't change what it is. You can call your new baby John, or you can call it Mary. I mean, depending on what you choose, it doesn't change the fact that that's a human being, regardless of what you call it. But I don't want to get off track here. For centuries and centuries and centuries, esoteric teachings remained hidden, reserved for the select few. Who selected these few? They selected themselves because they had the type of nature that would settle for nothing less than the truth. They weren't interested in what people believed. They wanted to know the truth of existence. What is it? Where did it ever come from? Is it moving? They wanted to know the truth. They were very zealous about it. It was their passion. They strived and oftentimes failed, hit roadblocks, stumbling blocks, ran into brick walls, and then stepped back, climb over the damn wall and start again. to be a true seeker is no simple task. But it's the seekers, the ones that are determined. They're determined. They've made a mindset. I'm going to find out. It takes that mindset. It's a mindset to know what's true and what's false. Beliefs have nothing to do with it. Those people are few and far between. But a true seeker recognizes another seeker. That's why Tibetan monks, for example, in olden days until today, Tibetan masters, Amazonian shamans, their label doesn't matter. But these are men who found what they were looking for, which is just the beginning. The first thing that you find is yourself, not your ego self, not your persona, not your body, not your name, not your job, not your marital status or financial status, but your nature, your true nature. When you find that, that's just the beginning. But finding yourself opens up doorways, pathways to information that sometimes you get it. Like I said, sometimes it seems like a download. It comes and you really don't know where it came from. Ultimately, you understand where it's coming from. It's coming from what you are, which is source. It's things you've always known but forgot. Remember I said memory plays a big part in all of this. But that's another story. We'll get into that when I get into it. So yeah, first those people chose themselves. Then the guru or the shaman or the monk or the master or whatever you want to call them, they recognize that in another person. There are not many people who are true seekers. That is not to cast a shadow upon humanity. It's a fact. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. Okay? I have made it well known, and if you watch my videos, you already know this. I've made it well known for a reason that I've spent many years studying the biblical manuscripts, the books of the Bible, Old Testament and New Testament, Gospels, epistles, books, call them what you want. And in the end, I understood that there was a lot of things I thought I knew and that I believed, that in the end my beliefs proved wrong, but the truth of what was being actually said dawned upon me. It's like when you come to the end of knowledge, it's the beginning of wisdom. That's a proverb. But I wanted to know the truth about what was being said. I didn't open it up to find out what people believed. I was searching for what I at the time and is often referred to as God. But recently there's been a television commercial that runs on different networks. And the man in the commercial, the orator, the man in the commercial, he's well known. And he comes from parents that are well known in the religious circles. World known. And I don't know why, so I was almost embarrassed to ask the question, but he was talking about the Bible. In the commercial, he talks about the Bible. I think he mentions Jesus, I'm not sure. And I watched it casually. I mean, I had no great interest in his commercial, but he's talking about the Bible, and he made a statement. He said, I know that every word in this book is true. Do I understand it all? No. But I believe it all. He's cleaving knowing from believing, and I'm thinking, well, what does he know and what doesn't he know? And does he know what he doesn't know? Is he believing things in error? And if he believes it's all true, why would he believe that? Because if he can only believe that it's all true, then he doesn't know the truth, or he wouldn't have to say he believes it. If you follow me. I know that sounds like circular logic, but it's my nature. These are the type of questions that I ask myself. I have nothing against the man. In fact, good for him. I hope some people listen to him. I really do. Because every path has a beginning. Pilgrim's Progress. Where was I going before I got so sidetracked there? All right, we're getting back to Earth and Pralaya and Manvantara. There are two other words I should mention. There's the word Pralaya, and then there's another word it's the same word, but it's a prefix to the word. It's called a Maha Pralaya. There's a Manvantara, and then there's a Maha Manvantara. Now, the word, that prefix of Maha in front of these words indicate that you're talking about Pralayas and Manvantaras from the most utmost perspective. From the utmost perspective. You know, I mean, like, in Eastern religious manuscripts, like there's an hour of like, okay, there's like an hour of Brahman, there's a day of Brahman, there's a week of Brahman, there's a month of Brahman, there's a year of Brahman, there's an age of Brahman, there's a life of Brahman. And those are just, they're concepts that pralayas and manvantaras have varying lengths of time of manifestation and non-manifestation. And a life of Brahman is like the biggest. It's like a universal manvantara and pralaya. And then there's something beyond that, but I'm not going there right now. This stuff can get complicated enough without going into the weeds. You can learn all about it if you know where to look. I feel I would be doing you a disservice if I recommended to you where to look. Because you oughta, if you're interested, you'll find it. You'll look until you do. That being said, just know, take away from this video that a manvantara and a pralaya are equal periods of time. One of manifestation, one of non-manifestation. And they're cyclic. They never began and they never end. For eternity. And remember, keep this little footnote in your thinking. There is a difference between the word eternity and infinity. They mean two different things. Later on, we'll talk about that, but not now. So, this is the basics, the very basic tenet of the subject of cycles, the concept of manvantara and pralaya. All cycles, be they extraordinarily long or happen so quick that you don't even know it. Even your breath is a manvantara and a pralaya. You breathe in, you breathe out. And there's a period of time between the time you breathe in and the time you breathe out, and they're all pretty much equal. It shows up in all of nature. Everywhere. And you'll see it in everything if you look for it. Even in the atom of that makes up the screen that you're watching this video on. That atom, that's infused with consciousness. It is consciousness. That's a hard thing for people to believe. I would that they would know it. But if you don't know it, the best thing to do is to consider it could be possible. Don't rule it out. Investigate it. Everything, for lack of a better term, is what we call life. Everything. Nothing excluded. Nothing excluded. Even death, that concept defines life. And life defines death. And there's really no such thing as death. There's a transition out of this mortal coil. But what you are, spirit, is not subject to birth and death. It just goes on. And there's a cycle behind that also. People say that they die, well, they're taught anyhow that, by exoteric religious organizations, organizational religion on almost corporate scales, that if they follow certain rules and if they believe certain things and they meet certain requirements, when the body dies, they, whatever they think that they are, their soul, whatever, they go on to heaven. And that they're going to dwell in heaven for eternity. Well, there's others who say that when the mortal coil ceases to be, when it dissolves, you go on, but for various reasons, you end up coming right out of another mother's womb after a period of varying durations of time, depending upon, that's called reincarnation. There are a lot of beliefs. There are people who talk about what's called devacon, which is the esoteric equivalent of the word heaven. That when the soul leaves the mortal coil, the body, it finds itself in devacon. And in devacon there are many, many different planes, different layers. It has to do with how many cycles, like these earth life cycles, that you've been through. What's the truth? There's a lot of different beliefs. What's the truth? If I believe anything about that, it's this. That I'm convinced that when a man or a woman or a dog or anything else, when a man or a woman dies, when their body dies, there's a lot of people who believe that all of a sudden they know everything. Well, they don't. You don't know any more at that point after having left the body than you knew when you were in it. However, not being subject any longer to the first and second law of thermodynamics, the laws that govern physical existence, no longer being subject to that, but having moved beyond that. It's like in a dream. When you dream, you can fly all over the place. You're not subject in the subtle bodies to the laws of physical science. You're freed from that, so you can do all kinds of things. if a man or a woman dies in anguish, afraid, laying there on their deathbed, perhaps pondering, oh, I've been a bad person, I'm going to hell, oh, and they're miserable in their death. In what state do you think that they're going to find themselves once released from the body? Well, it's not going to be any fun. Nevertheless, they too, not being subject to physical laws, that's a large yoke off, and they're able to bloom much more easily than they ever could here on Earth. Earth existence is hard. It's hard. Remember I said that we descended from the highest of conscious existence, intelligent existence. We descended through many different like frequency levels, states, planes, call them what you want, over a vast period of time until we ended up here in physicality. I don't know of anything lower. This is bad enough. It's hard. Physicality's hard. Wouldn't it be much better to not be bogged down by a weighty body that's got to eat and shit and pee and, get sick, it hurts, injured, not to have bills that are pressing on us. You got to pay your rent or you're getting evicted. Oh, where am I going to get my next food? I mean, life on this earth, for the most part, and for the vast majority of people, is pretty hard. And in some cases, downright, absolutely, terrifyingly miserable. While others seem, they got the BMW and a house in Bel Air and, the beautiful wife, and the kids are behaving pretty well sometimes. And from the outward appearances, they seem to have it made. They seem to have a good life. What's not seen in that is those things about their life that don't appear to our senses, like what's going on in their heart and in their minds. They may be totally freaking out in fear and agony and pain emotionally. Intellectually and in their feelings. Some would call that spiritual sickness. So yeah, life is hard right now, and this is where I'm going to jump off here. This introduces, as it relates to the earth, our physical planet, the earth, and our existence, I hate to say upon the earth because we are the earth, that's another story. The earth also has manvantaras and pralayas, but when you break it down, there's cycles within cycles, like I said, wheels within wheels. We descended from there's a thing called yugas. Those are earth ages. They're also the ages not just of the earth, but of what are called root races, which refers to people that have cycles, and they're called yugas. And it's the same principle that we initially, upon arriving, so to speak, on this earth, we entered in, things were pretty nice. Okay? But like any other cycle, it descended. We're now at the bottom part of that descent. It's called Kali Yuga. Maybe you've heard the term. And we're just starting our ascension back to a golden age. But that takes a lot of changes, not only of humanity, but of the earth itself, of the other planets in our solar system, of the sun itself. It all works together. Okay? It all works together. The solar system is a being. It's a living, intelligent being. Oh man, what's he saying? You know, that man on television is telling everybody to read the Bible. He heard me say something like that, and like I could expound on that greatly. But just that basic little statement and premise that our solar system is a living being. The sun being like our brain. It's has access to the sum total of the rest of the consciousnesses within the solar system. Just as our brain has access to the consciousnesses of every cell in our body. That man, he'd probably tell me, sir, you better accept Jesus or you're going to go to hell for eternity. You're talking things that sounds demonic. It's not. What in the world would a demon have to do with the solar system being a living being? That doesn't even make sense. Is it true? Find out. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Could the galaxy itself be an ascended, bigger than its sum total parts of solar systems, the black hole being its core, central processor, so to say, that has access to all the collective consciousnesses in the galaxy. It's a more advanced being than a solar system. What? Is that possible? Find out. Who told me these things? How could I come to concepts like that? It's a source self-connection, and you have it. Because you are it. You've got to recognize and learn how to use it. You already know all things and have no need that any man teach you anything. Are you even willing to believe that? To ponder it? Is that possible? Remember I said that memory has a big play in everything. We already know all things. We don't remember what we know because of our limitations being precipitated, condensed, so to speak, limited forms of mind and consciousness. We feel limited. We bust out of that. The one is the many, and the many is the one. They're not separate from anything. All right, I could go on all night, but I want to thank you for listening. Pralaya, Man Van Terra, basic concepts of manifestation, non-manifestation in a cycle. Basic concepts of everything that has to do with cycles. And the subject of cycles is vast. I'm not even going to... I'm limiting everything to our physical earth. We'll talk about the cycles of the earth and the cycles of us and the things that the earth consists of, and mineral, animal, flowers, whatever. Us. The earth is not necessarily what we think it is. It is a being. It is, at its core, it is the collective consciousness of all the consciousness that it's made of. Each of us is a consciousness that doesn't live on the earth. We are the earth. Just like the hairs of your arm are your arm. They don't live on your arm. They are your arm. There are cycles behind all of this. There are periods of regression and growth. There are periods of ascension and descension. But it all is part of the grand game. All of it. All of it. And the imagination of, for lack of a better term, universal mind. What is that? It's very powerful. What it is, it's hard. You can't talk about it. It's hard to describe. Okay, hour and 12 minutes. That's about my normal time. I didn't have much problems with my software, which I've been having lately. Thank you for listening. I hope I said something interesting, something to stir you, something maybe to prod you on a little bit. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe. If you have friends that hold the same interests that you have, you wouldn't be watching this if you weren't interested in these types of things. Invite them to watch also. I have a comment box. Ask me questions. If you don't like the answer, you don't. I might not like your question. It doesn't matter. We'll work it out. We'll work it out together. If you have something to say, say it. I'm not hiding from anybody. I'm reachable. So there are many people that couldn't be paid to talk to me. My kids are like that sometimes, but that's all right, you know. All things work together for good in the end, yeah. So, peace be with you. Enjoy your earthly experiences as best you can. Watch what's happening in the world. A lot of things are happening. Handwriting's on the wall. Signs of the times. Learn to read them for your own benefit. You're still playing the game. Remember, the game has a lot to do with what we call choices. What you do and what you don't do. Some things are beneficial, some things are not. Be smart in the game. Don't let the game play you. Play it. Okay, I'll talk to you soon. I'll be back soon, I guess. I can't say exactly when. Whenever the spirit moves me, as the old cliche says. All right, bye.